All right, well, welcome again to this webinar using the WordPress block editor to make your website awesome. Hopefully we'll be able to deliver on at least part of that promise today. So our mission here at 5 More Talents is to help you cultivate healthy growth for God's glory and the common good. We work with churches, we work with Christian ministries as well. We also have a few businesses that we work with as well, but our purpose is to help you use the power of the web to cultivate healthy growth in your church or your organization, wherever the Lord has placed you. So today, I just want to go over our agenda. I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction to 5 More Talents, about who we are, what we do, how we do it. And then the bulk of our time is going to be all about the block editor in WordPress. We're going to go over just a few kind of key concepts when using the block editor. And I'm going to go through 2 examples of awesome layouts you can build with the block editor. And then we're going to conclude just with a few little tips about how to work smarter, converting pages from the classic editor to the block editor, and then a little bit about the development roadmap for the block editor that's coming in 2021 and 2022. So let's get started. And again, if you have questions, please go ahead and type those in the chat window as they occur to you. And then in the last few minutes today, I'll do my best to address those questions. So just a little bit about 5 More Talents. First of all, who we are. We are a growing team of people who help you with your website. We actually have a number of our team members in this meeting today. Looks like we have Bobby with us, our web developer. We have Megan with us, our digital marketing specialist, and Reed, our web administrator, is also with us today. So I'm glad that each of you are here as well. So what we do is, of course, website development. We provide ongoing website care, and we also are very passionate about training, equipping, and consulting with you to make the most of your website. How we do it is, of course, technology is a big part of it, but technology is designed to be used by people for people. So we always try to keep that in mind, and we try to think about what processes are we using to get the results that you're looking for, and then to learn the best processes ourselves and then share what we're learning with you. So let's dive in to the block editor. So the block editor is a new feature of WordPress as of WordPress 5. So we're up to, I think, WordPress 5.7 now. So the block editor has been around in WordPress for at least a year and a half. I can't remember exactly. So you need to be using WordPress, which I think all of you are. Many of you may still have the Classic Editor plugin installed on your website. And that Classic Editor plugin has different settings, which may influence whether or not you're able to use the block editor, and if so, how you use it. So that can need to have those Classic Editor plugin settings, or just remove the Classic Editor plugin completely. And then the third thing is WordPress theme compatibility. So basically, any WordPress theme can display content from the block editor, but what you'll find with some themes is that there's kind of a few rough edges where you can't necessarily make the full use of the block editor. And maybe there's a few, maybe you need to switch to a different theme in some cases, or maybe there's a few little tweaks that need to be made to your theme in order to be able to use everything in the block editor. But just looking at the participants list here, I think most, if not all of you, are using one of the WordPress themes that has very complete block editor compatibility. All right, so let's start to get into the fun stuff. And in a minute, we'll get to actually where I'll be giving you a live demo of using the block editor. But let's first just kind of orient ourselves to what's in the block editor interface. So when you are in the block editor, it looks kind of like this. I've just numbered some of the key things to look at. So number one here is this blue plus sign. This is what you click to add a new block to the page. Now blocks can be all different kinds of things. They can be paragraphs, images, headings, buttons. We'll look at some of those in just a minute. Two, this little thing that looks like 3 horizontal lines arranged in a stair step, this is actually really, really helpful. What it does is it sort of shows you like a table of contents of all the different blocks that you have on your page. It can be really helpful for selecting the exact block that you need to work with. All right, number 3, there's this gear in the top right. And so this controls this panel that you see on the right side of the screen. And this kind of has all the settings for whatever block you have selected. It also has number 4 is showing where you can toggle between the page and the block. So there's page level settings and then there's block level settings. All right, number 5, this is showing an individual block, and you'll see in just a minute when I do the live demo that there is a contextual menu which appears when you click on a specific block. So that's what this thing here that has, as text, has a cropping, has a link. And it kind of varies depending on which block you're working with. And then finally, 6, this is showing there's a preview button where you can preview what the changes look like on your site before you publish those. All right, so you ready to dive in? Let's look at our first example, which is going to be a clickable image grid. So let me go ahead and switch over to just show you. This is an example of one of the church websites that we support, and that we built this layout for them where they wanted to highlight their popular sermon series. And so this was built using the block editor. And what it is just a grid of images. So it's going to be a really engaging way where if you have instead of having a list of just text, instead you can represent that as images. So I've built a similar demo here that basically has, instead of having images with text on them, it has images with buttons below them. And so by watching this demo, you'll see basically the same sort of concepts that you would need to build something like this sermon series grid. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new page. And again, please go ahead and make note of your questions, type them in the chat as they come to you. So, all right, so we're going to give this page a title. We're going to call this the image grid demo 2, all right? And we're going to start by adding a columns block. We're going to do 3 columns. And now we're going to add some images. So I'm going to add an image here. I've already have some in the media library. You'll notice there's some duplicates of some of them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second as to why that is. So we're going to go ahead and put in the first image. And then we will go ahead and put in the next image. And then we'll go ahead and put in a third image. Right. So I guess one note is that, part of the quality and impact of an image grid is going to be based off of the quality of the images that you select. So if you're looking at this and saying, I don't really like the way that looks, well, it might be just because you don't like the images that I put. So you can choose the images that you want, and because it's it's an image-based grid. It really depends on the images that you choose. But anyway, we've already made some progress. Let's go ahead and save the draft and preview it. And this is probably where one of the first problems is going to crop up. Yes, it is. All right, so this is probably one of the trouble spots that and frustrations that some of you may have encountered if you've tried to do stuff in the block editor. So this is kind of, let me show you how to deal with this kind of thing. So what we're seeing here is an issue that relates to the theme settings, because the goal was to kind of have this be more of a full width screen. So the exact way this works is going to depend on which theme you're using. But in this case, I'm using the Astra theme. And there's some Astra settings. So this theme has a setting to display a page with no sidebar. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and it's going to be no sidebar. So let's preview it again. All right, so now this is looking more like we would want an image grid page to look. All right, let's add another row. Oops, I did not want to do that. So that's where the undo button comes in handy. All right, so let's duplicate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this this really handy list view tool. I'm going to select the whole thing, and then I'm going to duplicate it. All right, and now I can go through and I can insert some more images. And of course, you can also upload images directly into here. Let's go ahead and replace that one. Hopefully at this point, you're feeling really comfortable with how to add images into these different grids. All right, so good, we had another problem crop up. So you can see that these images, some of them, especially in the second row, some of them have a different aspect ratio. So thankfully, with the image tool, there's a crop tool, and you don't have to be left to just eyeballing it. What I recommend is you use this aspect ratio tool, and you can select one of these preset aspect ratios. I recommend 16:9 because that is, or 16:10. Those are very close to the shape of most people's computer screens. So that's why I'm picking that. I'm just going to go ahead and click apply. All right. And you can see now these other two were also 16:9 aspect ratio. And so now those images match. And you could, if you run into problems like that, you can just go through all the images and use that crop tool to crop them to the same aspect ratio. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, preview it, see how we're looking. All right, so now we have a nice image grid. The images in the first row are a little bit taller than the images in the second row, but like I was just showing you, you could correct that by going through and using the crop tool. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and crop this one to 16:9. Wow, it's taking a long time. Maybe I should cancel that. Oh, it looks like it worked eventually. All right, let's crop another one. Also taking a long time. There it went. And then we'll crop this one as well. All right, so now they all have the same aspect ratio, so it has a very consistent appearance. All right, so now the last thing is simply to add the links to the images to make it clickable. And we can also add buttons. So to link the image, you can just, here you would paste your URL, or you can search in whatever things you already have. Let's see, I'm just searching the posts I know that I already have. All right, so those all work. So let's go ahead and save that and preview it. All right, now you can see I can click on each of those, and it then takes me to the page that goes with that. All right, I'm looking at the clock and noticing the time. So let me just show you the last thing, which is how to add a button to each one. So we can go and add a buttons block. There's a few little tricks to this. All right, so first you do that. Let's see, now, if you wanted to center it, you can go to the list view, select the buttons block, and then click justify content center. So that's a little bit of a trick you have to do there. You can link it, same methodology. All right, do one more, and then we'll go on to the next example. All right, so let's add this again. Let's add a buttons block, and go ahead and give that a title. Right, and then again, we have to use this. We don't have to, but I found it's easier to work with this button block by using that list icon. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, preview it. All right, so now we have ones where you can click on the image and go to the other page, or you can go and click on the button. All right, so that hopefully gives you an idea of how to make an image grid. So let's go on to the next example. So the next example I'm going to show you is a landing page layout. So here's an example of a church website. It's not built using the block editor, but the point of this exercise is to show you that you can build something very similar to this using the block editor. So what we have here is a big section with a video background. So I'll show you how to do an image background. But a video background is also possible. It has some boxes here. It has a sort of a one-liner message. Then it has a section with a sort of a parallax scrolling to it. So I've put together a demo of a landing page layout. And I'll admit it doesn't look quite as good as Crosspoint Modesto, but it's still not too bad, So let's look at how to do this. So again, we're gonna create a new page, and this time we're gonna let's give our page a title. All right, and this time we're gonna start by using a cover block. And we're going to go into our media library. We're gonna get our image of which one should we get? Let's get this one. The big image of the cowboy. All right. And we're going to go ahead and type in our welcome message. Being a little bit silly with welcome to Cowboy Church, but have fun. So there's that. Let's go ahead and see what we have so far. Because again, we're going to run into some problems. I'll show you how to fix them. So obviously this is not looking how we want it to look at all. So one of the things we need to do is we again need to look at the page settings. So again, the page settings that are available are going to be dependent on what theme you're using. And in this case, I'm using the Astra theme, which has some really good options. It's going to depend on the exact theme that you're using, what options will be available. So in the case of Astra, there's an option, of course, of no sidebar. And then for content layout, there's a full width stretched option. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm also going to disable the title. I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to preview. All right, so now it's starting to look more like that demo. Let's see what else we can do here. So I'm going to go ahead. So that's a paragraph. I actually want to change that to a heading. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to transform it to I want it to be an H1, which is the highest level heading. And then of course I want it to be centered. All right, and then I'm going to press enter. All right. Okay, and so then we have the message there. And then let's see, let's add a button as well. All right, let's see, get directions, we'll say. And then we will, again, use a little trick of selecting the buttons block. And then we have that. And then let's see what else we want to do. We want to change the color. Let's make it green. Oops, not the text. We want the background to be green. We can make the text bold. I'm going to try that earlier. All right, so now we have something that's beginning to look like that demo. So let's go ahead and preview that. All right, let's look at one other feature of this. We can click on this for the cover block to toggle the full height. That makes a big difference. I'm really just, you can see I'm just skirting over a lot of different settings. And I'm gonna give it a fixed background as well, which creates a different effect, where as you scroll down the page, the image stays fixed. All right. Now let's try to do a few more of these elements from our example. So the next thing we see is sort of a row of images. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, one of the things that because we have this page, let me just show you. Let's say we put 3 images in here. All right. Sometimes you have to be a little bit creative. So let's go ahead and put some images in there. You'll see another problem arises. So we've got to put on our problem-solving hats. All right. So let's take a look at this. All right, so a couple of problems. One, there's no space between the bottom of the welcome banner, welcome cover. And then I didn't want these images to be all the way to the edges of the screen. So let's come up with a way to solve this. So one of the things that can come in handy is you can add a spacer block. I'm going to add a spacer block. And we don't need 100 pixels of height. We'll use 30. All right, now how do we get these from not being stretched? Well, guess what? You can actually put columns inside of columns. So we're going to kind of have to recreate this a little bit from scratch. So we're going to start with the 25, 50, 25. Then I'm going to make this left one to have a width of 10%. The middle one have a width of 80%. And then the right one have a width of 10% as well. So, math, 10 plus 80 plus 10 is 100%. All right, now within this middle column, I'm going to add 3 more columns. Now I'm going to be able to add those images again. All right, that's more like what I had originally envisioned. So I'm going to save that and then preview it, see what we got. All right, so now we have this second row is basically what I was envisioning. So now I'm going to go ahead and delete this. There we go. All right, so, all right, looking at the time, I am going to, can come back to this in a few minutes if there's particular interest in it. But again, just going back to this, you can see the full landing page layout demo that I did. I was able to get all of these different elements in there using basically a cover block, headings, paragraphs, a button. These are all images using the columns in the way I just showed you. There's some spacers in here. Have some headings, and then this is another cover block, but the difference on this one is that I didn't stretch it to be full height. So we'll stop with that demo for the moment. Let's go back to the other slides and finish them off, and then we'll see what questions you have. All right, so next I want to talk about working smarter with the block editor. So I just want to point out a few things so that you're aware that they're available. So the first thing is block patterns. Then there's reusable blocks, and then there's block editor plugins. So I've just been showing you what you can do with just the built-in WordPress blocks, but there's also things called block patterns. So let me show you this. So when you click on this plus, you can see that there are there's patterns. So there's I'll just go ahead and add some of these. So if you want to have 2 buttons, just go ahead and we can add those. Right, these can be big time savers. If you find a pattern from the pattern library that is close to what you want, then it's very easy just to add those. Let's say if you wanted to have a quote like this, you can just drag and drop that right into the page. right? And there it is. So those block patterns can be really handy. They can be huge time savers, and then you can go and you can uh, start to make it the way you want it to look, right? Okay. Let's see, what else? Reusable blocks. So if you create a kind of a collection of blocks that you um, that you really like, let's say this, we kind of had this weird thing with columns within columns, what you can do is actually take this and add it to your reusable blocks. And then what you can do is you can actually go to my other page. Let's go ahead and save that. The reusable blocks can be used on any page. So I could kind of reuse this on this page, or I could go to my other page and then I could reuse this on my image grid demo or on any other page because it's now in my reusable blocks library. So let's say I wanted to put that right here, browse all, go to my reusable blocks, and here's my untitled one. And there it is. One tip, if you just start editing it when it's in this state, you're actually editing the block as a reusable block, so it would change it on this page as well as on the other pages. So usually when you're using reusable blocks, unless it's something that you want to kind of be coordinated among the pages, you'll want to convert it to regular blocks. And now it's in a state where you can edit it on this page without affecting the other pages. So those can be really handy. The third thing about working smarter and not harder is that there are, of course, with WordPress gives you such great flexibility. There are tons of plugins that have extra blocks. So one of the ones that we as a 5 More Talents team have had good success with over the past year or so is called Ultimate Gutenberg. So we'll go ahead and install that, and I'll just show you what that does. So you can see it has a bunch of different blocks that it adds. And if we go back to one of the pages, just kind of hopefully pique your appetite as to what those can do. All right, it's loading, it's loading. What we're going to do is we're going to look at what blocks we have available now. And you can see here, now we have, scroll down there, and we have these purple ones are these ultimate add-ons blocks. So there's an advanced heading, a post grid, post masonry. I won't go through all of these. Testimonials. It's like a testimonial slider that scrolls. You can have a content timeline, call to action, block quotes, marketing buttons, team. I mean, it goes on and on. There's all these different. There's a big time saver. So there's Ultimate Gutenberg and then Cadence blocks are the two that we're most excited about as far as what they can do. All right, let's just take a look at a couple of other things. So you might be wondering what this means for pages that were created in the classic editor. So basically, let's say you were to just completely take off the classic editor plugin from your website, which would just leave you with the block editor, which is the default editor in WordPress today. Here's what you would see. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. Okay. Give it a chance to load. So you can see it has this classic box here. And it's kind of loading slowly. All right. So you come across something like this, you can see that you can just click convert to blocks. And usually that does it. Like in this case, in the case of a blog post, then that's really just about all you need to do. Sometimes you run into weirdness that you need to sort through, but usually that's all you have to do. So we'll go ahead and update that and preview it. Of course, from that point, it doesn't automatically like put in cool layouts for you necessarily, but it at least gets you out of the classic editor format. All right, and then last point is that the development work on the WordPress block editor is still continuing on. The current things that the WordPress development team are working on are full site editing, which is basically, as I understand it, going to replace widgets and headers and footers, and basically your widgets, your headers, and your footers would all be edited in the block editor, not just the page content. And of course, going along with this, there's block-based WordPress themes which are now coming out. So over the next 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 months, these are the kind of things that you can expect to hear more about. So I've actually gone over the amount of time I said I was going to go. So we're now at the part for live Q&A. So we got about 5 minutes left. So I'm very interested in what questions you all may have. So since we are in a bit of a small meeting, if you feel comfortable, you could unmute yourself and ask the question, or you could type your question into the chat window. What questions do you have? All right, here comes a question. All right, great question. Is there a specific reason that we don't want to use Classic Editor? Is it going away or just harder to use? That's a great question. So with the Classic Editor, let's say the layouts that I showed you, if you wanted to try to create any of these layouts with the Classic Editor, you basically have to get into writing code. So that's the main value of the block editor, is that it allows you to build more complex layouts, such as the ones I've been showing, without writing any code. So that's the main point. Is the classic editor going away? So right now, if you just, let's say you just installed an empty WordPress site, it would not have the classic editor in it. If your WordPress website has the classic editor, that's only because there's the classic editor plugin that is installed, which basically kind of grandfathers you in to the WordPress classic editor. Now, I haven't checked this recently, but last time I checked, they were saying that they are, okay, here you can see, it's an official WordPress plugin and will be fully supported and maintained until at least 2022 or as long as necessary. So eventually, the classic editor is going to reach end of life and will no longer be supported. Eventually that is likely to happen, but we still have maybe probably about a year before that becomes an acute problem. All right, good question. Another question, is it safe to download the plugins, or might they cause functionality issues? So I assume you're talking about the plugins that I mentioned, the Ultimate Gutenberg block plugins, or the cadence blocks. So the answer is, the quality of WordPress plugins does vary. And it's in the case of these two plugins, the main two concerns that I would want you to be aware of are, number one, anytime you install a plugin on a WordPress site, it makes your site just a little bit slower. So you may have even seen that after I installed Ultimate Gutenberg, the block editor didn't load quite as quickly, right? And so anytime you add a plugin, you get more functionality. It enables you to work smarter, but you have that trade-off with where things might slow down just a little bit. And the more plugins you add, the more that piles up. Far as whether those particular ones might cause, if there's a safety issue or a functionality issue. In the case of those two plugins, they both have hundreds of thousands of users at this point, and so they're being actively maintained and developed, and so they're doing security patches. So really, the only thing that leaves is that whenever you start to add more and more plugins to your site, there can be plugin conflicts from time to time, where the way that one plugin is written conflicts with something else on your site. And then, of course, it kind of, if you start to use it on every page, then you sort of develop a reliance on that plugins, to where if you ever wanted or needed to uninstall it, then once you uninstalled it, then all those blocks built with that plugin would break. So I guess that's part of the reason why in the examples I showed you, I was just showing you blocks that are just built in to WordPress 4, because at this point you can do quite a lot with those. All right, we got one more minute. If anybody else has a question, those are really good questions. Anything else? All right, well, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate your interest in this webinar, and hope you have a wonderful day. Bye now.